Alright, hey everybody, it's me, Steffi Cat. By the way, most of all of the music used in this video is going to be, nobody's music. I use their music a lot, and, I'll probably, link it in the description. Why not, all of the ones that I use. Let's just get to business, though. School projects, am I right? Okay, please, no, please don't click on the video! Okay, well, uh, if we're being honest with ourselves, school isn't amazingly fun, and if you still find enjoyment in school, I applaud you for that because it can be really tough sometimes. The workload is incredible, and the way that classes can just seem to unanimously, I think I used that word right, but unanimously altogether, uh, gang up on you at the worst possible time where you're just like begging for some rest. Yeah. But all that being said, school can definitely have its amazing, great fun, and I find that usually in my English classes. I like making stories, as you may or may not have known if you've seen this channel. And yeah, this year I was able to make a couple of pretty fun stories in my creative writing class, and I don't know, I just thought it would be fun to share with you guys. Yeah, I have, if you're interested, a Gothic short story to share with you, which surrounds very interesting, very bizarre idea in itself, and also a historical fiction, which I know what you might be saying. Historical fiction, that sounds super boring. All of this sounds really boring, actually. No, no, no. It's actually a lot more fun than you'd think, at least if you like apocalyptic type stuff. At least that's what I would think. So, yeah, I'll put some stuff in the background. I guess some disclaimers to get out of the way. This video is not going to be like good visually at all because I don't really want to edit this video very much, and also I don't really have any drawings to like show with it. So maybe I'll make up a drawing or something like that. But most likely I'll have like some Bed Wars or uh, Rivals of Ether footage or something just to go on the background. And also, since I don't know exactly how mature my audience is, as I've said before, I feel like I kind of am all encompassing, at least a little bit. I will share that the Gothic short story and historical fiction, let's just say I'm a very descriptive writer, and I really like using imagery and describing every single detail I'm thinking for one of my creations in a story. And let's just say it gets a little way much, like very, very, I guess, gory, kind of. But then again, it's a gothic. And then the historical fiction, it'll also make sense when it comes to that, too. And who knows, maybe I'll sprinkle some poetry in there. Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun writing these stories, and I just thought, why let them go to waste sitting in my Google Drive when I could share them with all of you? And for all who care or would like to listen, then here we are. I'm also probably not going to try to edit my voice over of all of this, so I might read slowly because I'm not the best reader. And yeah, I guess let's just jump into the Gothic short story. Yeah. The Gothic short story is named A Forsaken Absorption. And also, if you don't know what a Gothic short story is, it's pretty much like a gritty, the gritty, no, it's kind of like a horror story a little bit. It's like a Halloweeny, spooky, supernatural element type story, and yeah. So Let's jump into it. A forsaken absorption. The empty, distraught halls of the terror-turned sanctuary cry out in distasteful silence. I walk wearily alongside Charles, eyes darting left and right, praying another alien horror won't meet us. Fragments of shattered glass break under our every step we take, and there is no more reason to think of where we tread any longer. The ground is eternally tainted with the most insignificant obstacles that would only waste time to dwell on. The blue, vivid paint provides compromise to every creaky wooden door, insultingly inconsequential AEDs, the torturous pale yellow floor tiles, and all splintered windows. Two symmetrical passages question our path upon every intersection we face, and Charles lets me decide. Nurse ATO is quite the swell fellow. He never calls in sick and is always seen with a pleasant smile. In some way, no matter the command, he always follows directions without a fault. He must have no enemies. Even today, of all forsaken days, he approached our trapped nest with the utmost calm contrition. Cautiously traveling through the emergency sector's barren hallways, a transient uncertainty writhes within my mind. Charles, I patiently start, you are sure the entryway was locked, correct? Modestly separate from me, Charles silently squirms with one of the many doors in the hallway, movement slowing. Oh, why, yes, Jonathan. I am quite sure that they were unwilling to open, he squeamishly murmurs, eyes scanning the space around me, then turning back to the hatch. Charles fiddles lightly with one of the wooden pathways, frantically fidgeting with the dull metal handle, but to no avail. I very well could have been mistaken with my observation, I fear, he nervously includes, but gestures to the locked door. Although it does appear that many exits around here are of a similar issue. I walk over to Charles's shivering self, and he continues to shuffle with the pristine cold metal handle. Once I meet him, he quickly takes notice of my presence and stops for a moment. He stares coldly at the barricaded window and door, shaking. We stand alone in front of the sealed door, waiting for nothing specific. The solitude feels so peaceful, yet the atmosphere is unbearable. Chunks of glass crumbling beneath my feet, I walk past the odd man and continue down the hall. Furthermore, the sound of crunching glass eventually follows behind me, too. Charles and I intently usher ourselves forward, the end of the emergency sector growing close. By now, Charles has discreetly made his way by my side, and to secretly keep in sync, he infrequently mirrors my steps when I pretend to look away. I don't mention the uncanny behavior, as I simply can't bring my mind to wrestle with the discomfort. I just don't understand what has caused him to act this way. My mind begins to drift into a sea of pondering. Could Charles also have this posture around higher-ranking nurses? Does he feel unimportant enough that he ought to act like someone he's not? Before I can plunge deeper into the unclean waters, Charles turns my way. Why, Jonathan? Yes, Charles, I skeptically retort, eyes fastened to the end of the hallway despite falling off my friend's gaze upon me. Well, I presume, Charles begins, but quickly turns as if he had been pulled back by insecurity. If it is all well with you, of course. If I could ask a question? I drag my heavy sight back to Charles's unsettled appearance, as I take note of his exaggerated shoulders weighing his every move. Charles continues with me at the same pace, just no longer turning his head to inspect my body's placement. Once again, his eyes nervously dance around my head, in an unconfident and unpredictable spasm, tripping, and tripping. With indecisive eyes no longer maintaining control of the hallway ahead, Charles immediately gets brought down by an unforeseen mass. I stop my pace and stand by the gent who stumbles, fumbles, and spews out apology after apology. My eyes remain on the path ahead, the walkway that leads into the unsettlingly murky restaurant. Light does not sneak through the windows of the cafeteria, and only soupy darkness is allowed to spill through. I notice pieces of glass forcibly moving across the cluttered floor of the dining area, barely brushing along with the monotonous breeze. Has it really been that long since we found ourselves trapped in here? Charles finds himself on his feet beside me again and continues expelling excuses in my every direction. Charles, I demand. He freezes in place, turning into a statue of fleshy trepidation. Charles's empty expression is scrawled yet flat, and his pale white skin strains around his bulging muscles. You may ask me anything, I lightly inquire, while motioning toward the cafeteria. Since when have you been unable to? As we begin to walk, I notice Charles' neck loosen, and his shoulders fall back to their original place, no longer an anxiously tense figurine. Charles silently sifts through his words, vaguely climbing towards a conclusive thought, as we navigate the unnervingly pristine path to the next room. Finally, after what seems like a lifetime of waiting, Charles cocks his head towards mine and carefully expresses his confusion to me. He provokes me with his interrogation, eyes uncomfortable and trembling, and a slight droplet of unwarranted worry reflected by the ongoing monotone and stingy lights atop his brow. Jonathan? Charles, if you want to ask me that question, I would not mind. I counter instantaneously. I don't even give thought to the bland response. Well, I was just wondering, Charles shyly asserts, about those you had to, put down? I notice Charles no longer looking at Sorry about that. I notice Charles no longer looking at himself in worry or shame, nor glancing towards me in isolated doubt. He looks ahead towards the cafeteria, eyes glassy and unmoving, stuck on something in the far distance. Charles pauses for a moment, vision abiding on whatever he notices from the cafeteria or onward, yet I know something battles him within his mind and soul. His mouth unnoticeably creaks open, and with unimaginable consideration, he cringes his eyes and steadily continues. Do you think, Jonathan, that there was any way that thump? Once again, Charles's oddly obsessive focus had caused him to trip over something. I don't care to look at what may have lay on the empty ground that caused him to drop, and instead drown out the ceaseless excuses while detecting a body standing in the distance. My heart sinks to my stomach and dissolves like the pink peach sand. What am I saying? Sorry. Like the pink peach sandy glass beneath my shoes. Not again, I vacantly exclaim under my breath, closing my crimson-stained fists. The mysterious figure takes notice of Charles and I's innocence, horrifyingly and hurriedly beginning to limp in our direction. It must have realized my partner's inability to protect himself, much less me. I stop in my tracks, and the desperate babbling soon catches up to me. It soon finds its end when it realizes our danger. Charles's mouth hangs open as a dumbfounded fool, my companion understanding that he would be useless to the upcoming inexplicable attack. The deceitful parasite violently makes its way to close the distance between us, yet I remain perfectly still alongside my futile friend. Clearer and more detailed the monster becomes as it hobbles near, and once again I find myself in existential turmoil. Disgracefully imitating a true practitioner's uniform, the nightmare wears a snow-white gown, unbuttoned and unprofessional. An intense stench creeps from the fake man, for an overwhelming scent of peculiar Italian pasta-coated cologne infects the washing air around him. I come to register that the odor manifests my own. The standard for the others, the grotesque animal wears a replication of my skin, but the suit appears blotchy and stretched, imperfect. As it inches its way to us, I notice its pale blue shoes and vomit green shirt, undoubtedly the same as mine. Worst of all, the repulsive being fails again to accurately emulate my face. Their ineptitude does not comfort my dread. Instead, the head that perches on the mockery of myself spills constant puddles of blood through its carved eyes and mouth. Jaggedly hacked away after innumerable incisions, the copy's eyes are left as craters of dark, oozing flesh. The puppet's mouth was carved into a daunting, exaggerating smile as a jack-o'-lantern, endlessly drooling a scarlet pus. Previous encounters allowed me to puke my sick, nauseated guts onto the spotless tile. But now I solely gaze into the empty, draining orifices of the beast, permeating with rage. Like the others who had attempted to ambush Charles and me, the emulated husk carries a seemingly random blunt object in its drooping, bent hands. It doesn't much matter what the demon poses against me, as I'm certain it won't prevail. The monstrous beast is only a mere feet from me, so I bend down to grab a severed piece of glass from below. Charles emptily watches me with his whole identity as I agonizingly grip the glass in my hand, the clean, sterile intensity sinking into my palm. He stands aside, silently watching as I lunge toward the shambling repellent and plunge the shattered glass into the fake stiff, hard neck, over and over and over. We soon make it to the cafeteria, empty and lifeless, akin to the rest of the hospital. I become aware of an increased density of crunching emitting from our movement. I presume that there is increased glass beneath us, but I don't look down to inspect nonetheless. Tiny, severed mirrors meet my gaze, reflecting a light peach hue and a mystifying rose pink, likely from the blood. I look back up to my damaged hand. I suppose Charles isn't completely of no use after all. He did offer a segment of his shirt to block more blood from escaping my slit hand. He might still be of help to us. The tables are either layered with dust or more splinters of glass from the windows that used to watch from above, fragments of a forgotten time. Charles drags himself to one of the many tables and sweeps his arms across, urging the debris to descend to the ground. With fatigued and dreary eyes, Charles looks forlornly toward me. "Jonathan, I am very, very tired from the running we've done today," the tired man emptily describes. "And I think we ought to take some sort of rest if it is well with you." I peer around the desolate wasteland, observing two doors. The entrance we had come from, with an unoccupied, inexplicably blurry corridor, and the exit from the present emptiness to more hopelessness. The surgery quadrant atrium. Before I can respond, I see Charles lying crinkled on one of the tabletops, delicately resting away. I watch him closer, and he is mysteriously, unconsciously neurotic. Finding my version of resting place, I stand over Charles's slumbering body and preemptively conclude respite is not an option while my partner senselessly settles. I perpetually I perpetually gaze at the interchangeable pathway leading down to the hospital's surgery wing and slow my inward action. Giving myself time to reflect, I loosen as much possible tension and stare blankly into the distance, diving into my mind. I swim as deep as possible, suffocating myself to process my commotion. The despairing dark soon fills my lungs as I fight. Crazy how many ads are there. Sorry. I swim as deep as possible, suffocating myself to process my commotion. The despairing dark soon fills my lungs as I fight to sink deeper into my pain and try to explain, why is this happening to me? Vanishing into the murky, strangulating waters, my subconscious begins to fall apart. But with a little more distance, I can reach what can be made out just from my reach. A bit further down, I realize a large, red, fleshy mass floats in the asphyxiation. As I grow closer to it, my anchor grows My gosh, I'm so sorry. As I grow closer to it, my anchor grows frail, but I begin to notice something that alarms me. The worn, broken heart that floats within my mind appears unrecognizable to my spirit. "I'm so sorry!" Someone reactively screams beside me. "But what was I to do?" Warped back to reality, I jerk away from the shout. Swiveling on my feet as a frightened spin top, I hastily glance at the table to find the source of disturbance. Charles sits on the table, sprawled out in a panic, quickly turning his head to inspect any danger nearby. I notice a cold sweat falling from his wrinkling, curled forehead, and his chest frantically misshapes while he catches his breath. I allow Charles to rise from his place of interrupted rest and question him on his trouble. As expected, he constantly apologizes and tries to push it off as an unimportant dream. I can tell it has bothered him and might also bother me. I persist. As we walk down the hospital's surgery corridor, paging farewell to the calm dusk, I coerce Charles into explaining his nightmare. He gives in and offers me a nervous synopsis. Charles found himself in the hospital, yet he was not alone, and not with me. He was surrounded by countless patients, nurses, and doctors, all carrying a miserable, bubbling resentment at him. Overwhelmingly, they got closer and closer to his unprotected self, yelling and screaming, begging. Their faces were malformed with anguish and affliction and tormented him until he awoke. I intuitively allow more pale yellow tiles to fill our distance as we walk through the hall. Charles has always been a good man. Has his innermost being truly changed in just one day? All I've done is protect us from... I can't seem to remember. The conscious-stricken man who walks beside me half glances to acknowledge our new gap, but looks down to his feet in enormous guilt. I look forward to the empty hallway, trying to keep my mind at attention, but with some ease. The same muted yellow tiles line the floor, the same ocean blue paint encloses the walls, and the same ever so often wooden door taunts our every step. The latest difference in the surgery wing's corridor is that shards of paint no longer engulf the floor, and most windows remain intact. Charles remains uneasy around this hospital section, unlike in the hallways I had chosen before. Sometimes I catch Charles taking a glimpse in my direction, then immediately looking back. I increase the gap between us further. On opposite sides of the hallway, we remain in pace with one another, yet an inexplicable tension. I catch the man next to me taking another peep, and snap. "Charles!" I roar. "Do we have an issue?" I promptly stop our stride and face the man. He shakes like a twig in a storm, and eyes my every move as a camera. He backs until he meets an immobile room door behind him and a perfectly consecutive glass pane beside. The bloke begins to throw exemptions and justifications my way without ceasing. But I find myself distracted by what looks back at me through the mirrored reflection. Within the glass's structure, I notice a beautiful, precious being. Long, delicate limbs, perfectly united rose skin embracing an impoverished chest, black, delightful marble eyes, and a childlike, content smile. The drowned fluorescent light barely reflects from the glass, imparting the slightest uncertain ambiguity to the creature standing in my place. I longingly stand in awe of the beast that finds me within the bewildering echo, and hear the quaint rustle of legging cloth. Recapturing my attention, I notice the person beside the reflection painfully securing a piece of glass in his hand, wearing a remorseful, horrified expression. In the blink of an eye, the man who once stood before me mutates into a wretched abomination, crudely parodying myself. The unbuttoned uniform, blue shoes, peach skin, and false personhood mask its sickening green. It's sickening. I'll just start over. An unbuttoned uniform, blue shoes, peach skin, and false personhood mask its sickening grin and leaking eyes. Not again. So that was a Forsaken Absorption. Took a lot longer than I thought it would. I guess kind of makes sense because, I'm a yapster. But yeah, I kind of enjoyed that one. I'm not gonna go into like greater detail on like the whole entire story in itself and like, oh, this is why I did this. Oh, this is why I did this. Blah blah blah. Because I almost want you guys to take the story as you would take it and not have the little, this is actually what was happening in the story and this is what I meant to happen. Blah blah blah. So yeah, enjoyed that. And so then we don't, bore you with another story directly afterwards. Let's take a short little break into some poems. Don't worry, these poems are going to be fire. The first one is about the Undertale Genocide Route. See? I told you they would be fire. Okay. Dust forms emptiness everywhere in the underground. The silence deafens my ears to hear. Or is that any? Gosh dang it, it's any. It's any. My bad. The silence deafens any ears to hear. Turn to a graveyard to mourn their hopes and dreams. But nobody came to comfort their screams. Cut down, shattered, born in a world just to die. Convinced their choices mattered despite all this time. Lost, empty-willed, to kill or be killed. Badly battered, beaten and bruised. I had to see what would happen. Some excuse. Soon, in due time, someone will arise. A person of bravery, confidence in life. A person, I just said that, who refuses to die and will save the earth, who will bring rebirth and restore justice. So yeah, we're gonna skip past this one, and also probably this one. We'll do turning the chapter, I suppose. Yeah, we'll do turning the chapter. So then we can also do the silly song one afterwards, which is a song, and it's a song. It's so funny. Okay, turning the chapter. Oh yeah, and the last one was called The Broken Prophecy. Turning the chapter. This is my elegy poem, which is kind of like a funeral poem. So, yeah. Drowned in the deafening train of time, aged. An old self lost to the past, unretrievable. Moments of joy, happiness, and safety ripped away from the boy who had too many dreams to count. Joined for the funeral of familiarity and fascination, forgotten. He was innocent, iconic, ideal as himself. He couldn't be convinced his future wasn't as bright as anyone else. Content, careful, quiet and closed off. Didn't care much of what anyone else thought, and enjoyed being his own. Oh. I thought it was going to be another ad, but it's like, okay. Never mind. Energetic, enlightened, but most important of all, he anticipated his future with excitement covering his eyes. Now he lay dead, or rather in his own world, confined to a time when he was in control. But the story hasn't finished. That chapter has concluded, but another just begun. Truly now is past the time to simply move on. So at rest a mind at its best, without shackles or chains. A new era has come to fulfill the past expectations now. To serve as a light, to keep moving forward. Okay, now I'm gonna try my best to sing. I am so sorry. Yeah, because this is my lyric poem next, and I wrote it for my silly Out My Way theme. The da 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 da. You know, first off, I would like to say credits to Toady for one of the melodies that I use in there. It's pretty much a one-to-one recreation, not intentionally, by the way, I will say. But it's pretty much a one-to-one recreation of Amalgam from Monster Mix's Genocide Route. So, yeah. Yeah, let's try this. I'm not gonna do perfect. I think I'm gonna have or try to have piano in the background. This is probably gonna be the craziest part of the video, but yeah, let's try it. All right, glory be to God. Let's do this. Go start running till your legs might break with this killer. You just mustn't stay. Mistakes were made now. This is your final chance. Run away. I am in an inescapable nightmare. Surely I can't overcome this terror. Please someone help me. I am all alone, but I can't lose. I've to protect them, stop your evil plans. It's my time to be of worth at all. You won't pass, no, not with my will. Goodbye, death. I've seen so many fall. What's this journey worth at all? But I cannot give up hope. I'll fit that hero trope. Despite my life being on the line, I'll fight to give them time. Surely now you've met your match. Our dreams cannot be snatched. Anxiety, sobriety, I will fight for thee, I will defend thee. Durability, because I will not flee, I will not fail now, I must not fail now. Oh, it is the end for you, my friend. Stop treating this like it's pretend. My own prophecy I will fulfill. The grief you've stricken is profuse. I'm only one life you have used. I messed that up. So I won't fuel your amusement. It's time you finally take a walk in their shoes. No, please stop this. I'm their final hope. With me gone, you'll just continue on. I'm sorry, I failed you. Farewell, my friends. Good night. Okay, now that I'm done making a fool of myself, how about we do the historical fiction? Historical fiction time! Yeah! Okay, so after the historical fiction's done, then I'm planning on, like, showing you guys, my creative composition, which I made for, my music theory class. It's for an upcoming character in a series. Anyways, we gotta start this soon because my bedtime is soon, and also this video is 40 minutes long already. No. So how have your guys' night been? Okay. The story is called Midnight. Drop, Miss Baker exclaims, her expression appearing surprised by her own abrupt loudness. Several tired groans arise from my friends. The sounds of scuffling shoes and squeaking desks quickly suffocate the air. As I frantically dive to the floor underneath, I take note of the metal necklace that struggles to remain tight on my neck. As I fall to the cold and dusty floor beneath my desk, I find myself reading the inscription on the dog tag my parents had recently gifted me. David. I don't know why I felt the need to examine that. Well, I suppose it may be of use if this whole drill wasn't mere practice. I slowly bring my hands up to cover my firmly set head and embrace the specks of dirt that work to irritate my closed eyes and mouth. Very well, class, Miss Baker critically asserts, but trails off into a senile rage. Adam Anderson, the old woman yells, muffled chuckles succeeding the frustration. Have I not told the class to drop? I can only imagine Adam's smug grin as he sits atop his desk, gazing around the room to see us nervously snickering under our desks. I don't know, Miss Baker, Adam sarcastically lets out. Am I a part of this class? Giggles rise from the room once again, especially from Johnny, who lays beside me, but I don't give much attention to the matter. I've got too much on my mind. Even if that weren't true, the drill is no laughing matter, especially with the recent bomb placements in Cuba, concerningly close to Miami. I've heard Mom and Dad having heavy talks about all that nuclear matter. It seems serious, but doubtfully under control. Nobody seems to give any mind to that potential apocalypse stuff anyways. My weary eyes fasten tighter for a moment as my throat expands in a fatigued yawn. It was unreal how much my poor eyes had to tiredly hang tough as I forced them to study my science project last night. The numbers and space behind it all felt like it mocked my slippery self. Ugh. Even when that suffering had alleviated, my love-struck heart wouldn't allow me to rest. My mind remains inattentive, despite vaguely hearing Miss Baker's argument carry on. Ever since the beginning of this year, I've come to notice Sarah's absolutely stunning personhood all the more. Her air, her, I said air 2 times in a row. Her hair acts as bouncy clouds that dance with her cute rosy cheeks. She is too beautiful. I'm so sorry, guys. If you're sticking with me, thank you so much. I do not deserve you. She is beautiful on too many levels to fathom. Last night, I found myself lying in bed, eyes closed, but mind not allowed to drift into slumber. My mind couldn't seem to cease thinking about Kara. Now we're in Undertale. Thinking about Sarah and how my heart yearns for her. Unfortunately, it didn't allow me to get a lick of sleep last night, so I am intensely tired today. The conflicted voices begin to fade out as I feel the cold floor begin to seem all the more comfortable. My fatigued arms relax themselves at my head, and I lose focus of the warm eyelids that blanket me in a drowsy darkness. A sensation of falling, floating, and feeling nothing at all tickles my brain. I allow myself to lean into the rest and relax. Out of nowhere, a blood-curdling screech pierces my tranquility. I thrust my head from the ground and quickly turn to where the scream comes. My eyes eventually focus on a friend that lays under his own desk beside me. Johnny, a dear friend of mine, someone who I've known since the first grade, wails uncontrollably beside me. He stares into my very soul, his face twisting and turning with extreme anguish. I hear the shattering of windows and catch a glimpse of glass flying through the classroom's horrified air, sliding right into the wrinkled crevices of my friend's petrified face. Crimson blood seeps from the fresh lines that mark Johnny's face, as his eyes cry out to me in a watery despair. The now loose flaps of skin that hang on to Johnny's leaking facade begin to dissolve into a peach-colored sand. I hopelessly watch my friend in an empty awe as his appearance deforms into a mushy paste, slowly dripping off the empty slate that was his face. He screams in absolute devastation, the white peach sand that formed his face gradually sliding off, leaving a bright red bony canvas of melting flesh. As his eyes begin to lose suction on their sockets, I reactively flinch back my face in disgust, unintentionally freeing myself from the trance. I force my body up from the heated floor, pushing myself into a seated position away from my agonized friend. Checking if my own appearance had been altered, I motioned my shaking hands to my face. My twitching fingers carefully feel the surface of my chin and cheeks, but are not eased by realizing the face's unaffected makeup. The pain shrieking continues from Johnny's sorry self, almost acting as white noise as I seek to understand what is happening. Slightly refreshed with an ounce of yearning hope, I press myself up from the roasting floor and stand into the heavy atmosphere of the classroom. I observe the broken window and pieces of glass scattered across the floor. Empty desks are perfectly positioned amongst the chaos. I cautiously turn to inspect more of my surroundings. I consider the clock that rests above Miss Baker's desk. It reads an odd 12 a.m., well past the time we should be at school, much less awake. My attention is soon taken by a horrifying chorus of excruciating screams that materialize around my frightened self. I bring my sight down to the desks of the classroom and am immediately taken aback by the inexplicable horrors it is met with. All of my fellow classmates lay under their respective desks as they look deep into my traumatized eyes, crying out to me in a despair as they too succumb to a similar fate Johnny does. Overwhelmed by the nightmarish tragedy occurring before me, my breathing gets shorter, and I feel the heat in the room rise. My friends, acquaintances, classmates, people, they all lie on the ground before me, and I'm unable to help any of them. I turn from the disfigured embodiments of my class in an overflowing defenselessness. My vision captures one last horrible fate quickly enveloping the school's courtyard. Through the window, I can see an enormous, thick gray smoke rushing to encase the space before my classroom. It's after me. The darkness floods in through the broken windows, and I stand in the void of madness. The intangible howls of my class grow louder with the cloud of unbearable heat presence, and I cover my stinging eyes to shield myself from it all. Silence surrounds me, apart from the faint blowing of wind coming from nowhere in particular. I hesitantly bring down my arms from my weak head, squinting my eyes in attempts to realize my surroundings. A blurry haze slowly clears from my dry eyes as I examine where I find myself. A fancy, velvet-red round table stands before me, and past it contains a dusky wooden floor illuminated by candlelight. On the table sits a beautiful gold-yellow rose, nicely kept by a glass vase, and two of the finest Cuban cigars. Due to where the recent destruction likely emerged, they are quite ironic to be here. The room makes itself out to be a romantic diner, but feels too odd to be so simple. The strangely cozy area is grand, massive even, but only contains my table. The candlelight that impossibly illuminates the entire room doesn't even appear to have a source. The space is eerily empty and unusually reminiscent of my high school. Why am I even here? Where is everyone? A shallow breath is taken as a surprised sorrow fills my mind. Memories that do not belong to me cascade into my heart, reminding me of who I had lost. No, I vacantly shudder, tears welling up in my glossy eyes. I look down to the wilted rose that tiredly leans against the rim of the vase, and feel my cheeks getting uncontrollably warm. I feel my heart beating faster inside my weighted chest as I prop myself up against the table's edge. Recollections of a day that never took place infect my brain, and I begin to remember it so clearly. Sarah's hair was extra bouncy that day. Other than that, the day was nothing special. Except it was also the day that I asked her out. Her eyes seemed to sparkle like the endless ocean as she cheerfully accepted the offer. And the next thing I knew, the date was set. It was also perfect. A dream come true. My eyes sadly sink to the velvet-coated table as an uncomfortable lump forms within my throat. It's over. My one chance. It's all over. Before it was even able to begin. I forcefully blink my eyes in an attempt to rid myself of the heartbroken waters that blur my vision, but it is of no use. Tears stream down my face as I fall to the table's top in a depressed stupor. My childhood friends, classroom acquaintances, and everyone else are all gone. They're gone, and are never coming back. Sorry again for the ads. They're gone, and are never coming back. I'm alone. I'm so alone. Countless droplets of grief descend from my despondent eyes as I desperately sniffle for any sense of comfort or air. The smooth velvet darkens across the entire table for my entrenched misery. I can't help but think about what life I have missed. The laughs, memories, and happy days that have been dispassionately taken from me. As I ball my extreme disappointed sadness onto the table's cloth, My mind begins to play a message I remember being countlessly demanded on the radio. The static voice continually yells from a patronizing distance. Alert! Alert! Quickly find and take shelter! Gather your loved ones and hide! Like that would have done anything. I was so naive. I was so stupid to think that they could have survived an inescapable, complete annihilation. I was such a flake, and now I'm all alone. I silently sob at the large, dark wooden room, awaiting no coming relief. A sound emerges from the abandoned air. The noise of ticking echoes through the walls, causing me to look up from my gloomy outburst. Rubbing my eyes of the dejection that lingers within my soul, I attempt to find where the ticking comes from. I look up at an angle to where a door might find itself in the expanse. Above where I would imagine a door placing itself in the diner, I find a black and white analog clock. The clock reads a simple yet confusing time. Both the hands point to 12, insinuating a time of midnight. Despite undoubtedly hearing ticking coming from the clock, neither the minute hand nor the hour hand moves. I stare at the clock in a bewildered escape and feel my surroundings become rather cold. I can almost hear the sounds of crunching snow beneath my tennies as I blankly stare into the clock's unmoving hour. A sound of hurried wind crescendos to my frigid ears as I find my vision fading to a whitish gray. My eyes squint, darting away from the harsh breeze that strikes the fading warmth from my cheeks. Readjusting my sight to my surroundings, I find myself on a cold sidewalk in an empty neighborhood. I recognize this place. This is my neighborhood. The same format that I remember from days I used to take lone strolls almost comforts me, but I am too unattached to care anymore. Additionally, the neighborhood has changed to a desolate wasteland in comparison to how I knew it. The neighbor kids aren't there to awkwardly greet me as they ride by. The Petersons' dog isn't around to play. Trees once beautiful and lively are now barren husks, and size empty stumps. Each empty yard is no longer blanketed with colorful flowers and rich green grass. The entire neighborhood is coated with a dusty light gray snow, as if winter were a close month to us. Some areas have larger piles of the flowery snow, while others contain a mere sheet of the soft powder. The sky is dark and the air is thick, yet the neighborhood is not covered in darkness. Everything around here feels insatiably heavy. A murky dimness suits the hopeless air and sooty ground. As I begin to walk forward, I notice something that defies my very mind. At every location in the neighborhood where a house should be set, a cement block, likely the foundation, sits. Atop each cement block holds a shifting mirage, almost completely unexplainable. One second the projection shows the welcoming suburban home untainted, while the next it appears in a complete state of disrepair. The images shift with each step I take, every move I make, and every second I walk through the miserably lonely community. I find myself walking as a robot who has lost its programming, traveling from sidewalk to sidewalk, turning left and right, but not having a clue to where I am walking to. I pass by dead bushes and countless more confused houses, and the wind pushes bitter reminders into my skull. Everyone's gone. Everyone I've ever known or loved. Gone. I continue my precise march as the penetrating wind patronizes my every step. As I begin to turn progressively nostalgic corners, I start to figure out where my I start to figure where my straying self is bringing me. I can remember the late summer nights where I used to take this exact path. After a long day of thinking, playing, or otherwise, I would always find myself taking this route back home. With a few more strides, I find myself at the foot of the driveway that leads into my house. My gaze falls down to my pale shoes in worry, knowing the horrible truth I will soon have to understand. I wait and allow myself to feel the chilled air thrash my lifeless body once more. I slowly ease my head upwards and see something that would almost make me want to cry. The air is too unforgiving and cold anyways. Where my house should stand lies an empty cement slab, not containing a baffling presentation of half construction, half decimation as the others do. My pad. My home. My soul wishes to weep, bawl, snivel out my undeniable pain, but cannot. My stale, dry eyes won't allow me to cry. I miss them all so much. I wish I weren't left to suffer without them all. As I peer past the space that should hold my house, something starts to happen to the other cement slabs in the neighborhood. Their depictions simply just start to disappear. I turn around to inspect the confusions that would be behind me, and realize they have vanished as well. The environment around me I can see clearer, and I am truly taken aback with sheer terrified amazement. To the furthest length of sight I can perceive, an infinite amount of uninhabited concrete platforms lie in perfect unison. I can't fathom an end to the uniform vacancies, the dark gray squares reaching out to the skyline. My mind aches and the cold wind's breath subsues. The air is still. Something deep within me begs to turn back to my house's slab, and away from the unending emptiness. I give in. After slowly rotating a smooth 180 degrees, something catches my eye on the stiff cement ground. A clean black and white clock lay in the very middle of the disheartening desolation. My eyes urge me to explore, and so my feet carry me up the driveway to the abnormality. I inspect the clock's positioning. It reads a ringing 12 o'clock. Midnight. I look up from the clock's unmoving nature and gaze into the dreadful abyss of concrete. My mind wanders to a better life, one where my friends survived, one where I could see my family again. No, I wouldn't wish this purgatory of purged dreams upon anyone. My arms begin to tremble as I contemplate attempting an escape. I'd need to find something sharp, maybe. Anything that could free me from this torment. As if mocking my very existence, my ears seem to hallucinate the gray lumps around me calling out my name. They begin quietly, then grow louder and louder with each shout. Their disembodied voices almost sound like the voices of my own classmates. David! I reactively flail my tired arms from behind my neck, accidentally jerking my head forward into the speckled cold ground. I groan with a groggy yawn. Ouch. A warm voice from beside me asks, Hey David, you alright? I slowly lift my head from the dirty floor, allowing my hands to console its throbbing sting. The same voice quickly interjects as I begin to gain focus on the shadowed plaster flooring. Watch out for your desk. Already looks like you hit your head badly enough from when Miss Baker woke you. My mind grasps its full consciousness and realizes what has just happened. I maneuver myself out from under my desk as the voice from beside me reveals his personhood. Johnny lends me his clammy hand and assists me to my feet. As I look to the rest of the classroom, I notice that most of the class has their attention on me. Many either meet me with confused gazes, annoyed glares, or curious smiles. I catch Sarah's eye. She wears a patient smile with a slightly concerned stare. David Robbins, I called for the class to take their seats from the drill 2 entire minutes ago. Miss Baker harshly spits, catching my awareness off guard. Do you have no respect for our time? Fishing for an excuse, I mentally scanned my recent memories, only to be taken aback by excruciatingly painful fragments of a false world. Speechless, my buffering sight helplessly meets Miss Baker's fiery judgment. A voice calls out from the class, mockingly remarking, Far out, David! Is this some protest from nap time in school? I frustratingly look to Adam's desk, where my distaste encounters the smirking bully. An awkward laugh spirals throughout the classroom, and Miss Baker keeps her hateful vision on me. Shaking my head in irritation, my eyes are placed back on Miss Baker. She eternally peers deep within my insecurity and seems to wait for my eventual response. I look to the classroom's clock, then back at my angry teacher in hopes of conveying a desire for progression. With cold, dead eyes, Miss Baker snarls to me, Well, Mr. Robbins, can we continue our learning? Taking the loathsome message, I hastily find my seat and adjust myself back to the school's refreshingly accommodating tone. Miss Baker emptily returns to the blackboard and continues the lesson she paused for the drill. The class fastens their attention on the woman, and I slow my breathing, attempting to calm my embarrassment. My eyes unfocus as I daydream into my thoughts, into the shattered life I had shortly experienced. The uncertainty, fear, and anguish felt all too real for a simple dream. I brush off the negative thoughts, though. Mom and Dad are clear that we need to be safer in school with the recent placements in Cuba. Dad's told me time and time again, almost always with the same unpleasant brew bottle in his hand, that he loves me. So what do I have to worry about? After all, nobody else seems to care about this nuclear fallout stuff. Why should I? And real quickly, I'll read the author's note, just because. Nuclear weaponry is terrifying. The very idea that with something as simple as a button press, the whole world could be taken into a complete state of disrepair is existentially fascinating to me. On a separate note, I find myself enjoying the exploration of complete isolation. Being left in a broken world with only one's own self to keep them company is a thought-provokingly deep fear of mine that I've desired to dive into. When the petrifying time of the Cold War came up as an option for my historical fiction project, I excitedly jumped at the opportunity. Looking back on the Cold War, the state many people are put in, and constantly preparing for nuclear annihilation, sounds chilling to a 21st century kid like me. Yet, when looking back on the masses' recorded attitudes toward it all, they all seemed to care exponentially less than what I would have imagined. Through Midnight, I sought to write an inspiring piece that would accentuate an alternate perspective to the common citizen's overall outlook on nuclear warfare. Myths like the Backrooms, a liminal nightmare of pure confined dread, as well as liminal spaces, unsettling areas that invoke feelings of bizarre unease, greatly inspired by the empty environments described throughout Midnight. My bad. All of that greatly inspired the empty environments described throughout Midnight. Some of my own personal dreams I've processed inspired the intense emotions expressed throughout the paper, especially drawing from powerful feelings of overwhelming uncertainty felt in my own apocalyptic nightmares. A specific dream comes to mind whenever thinking of something as terror-striking as a nuclear winter, one where my class and I were sent to an empty purgatory after we all found ourselves deceased. The sensation was near unexplainable, but the best I can describe it is feeling as though you shouldn't exist, which I also strive to integrate into my story through David's longing for connection with anyone at all near the end of his somber traversing. It should be noted that none of the characters used in this story, to my knowledge, are or ever were real people. David Robbins, Adam Anderson, Sarah Bentley, and Miss Baker are all characters specifically created to convey the story I look to tell in Midnight and never truly existed during the Cold War. While the duck and cover drill used in the story and David's deep thoughts on nuclear fallout were derived from reality, the events of the story itself never took place. That leads me to a part of the narrative that may have caused some confusion for readers who face the plot. Yes, for clarity, I will confidently state that most of Midnight takes place in David's mind, via his subconscious, intrinsic fear in losing everything and everyone he's ever known. Thankfully, the symbolism provided in the dreams he experiences allows the reader to feel the personal weight of the events that take place. Dreams fascinate me, them being composed of so many complex, moving parts that they can hardly be justified through words alone. While I believe that most dreams one will have may hold no real weight to them, though only the brain's attempts of trying to make sense of the nonsensical, I also believe that every so often, a bizarre dream may slip through the cracks of reality and provide a deeper insight into one's own self. I suppose it's all up to the interpretation of the dreamer, though. The research for this fiction was quite interesting at times, and lots of knowledge I did not have before was acquired. I mainly attempted to dive into the psychology of those alive during the Cold War. I looked for information on the public's perception of nuclear weaponry, annihilation, and fallout, and was gladly met with enough information to build a story that could smoothly fit into the seams of the real world. Surprisingly, not many were recorded as afraid or panicked during theoretically daunting events like the Cuban Missile Crisis. Thankfully, due to outlooks on social matters being inherently subjective, my story was able to bring light to a possible outlier's stance on the matter, for better or worse. While I liked writing this story, the absolute mental anguish some likely went through at the time of the Cold War's constant precariousness could not be more understated. I read the story to those who felt out of place with their heart-wrenching concerns of the Cold War, who may have even supposed they were wrong to feel scared of the nuclear horrors that were so publicized. Having one's emotions feel invalidated because of the public's perception on a matter can feel suffocating and extremely disheartening. As well as mass opinion can have the ability to be a good anchor to reality, nobody should feel incorrect for having fears that others don't deem worthy. Don't feel bad if you're afraid or have worries. Just know that there's always, almost always, a glimmer of hope in the midst of the chaos. Thanks for listening. Yeah. And now, I'm gonna play for you my creative composition. So, this is meant to be a composition. It was created on Noteflight, if any of you know that. It's kind of like a beginner band music, make your own music thing. It's not great, but I think it's at least a good starting point for this one character named the Dreamer and his theme. I might even throw up a little picture of him. I don't know why I'm yapping so much. Let's just get to it already. Please don't lag. The ending could use some work, I will say. But anyways, with a pretty much, I think this is over an hour video done. I thank you so much for watching, and I'm not gonna take any more of your time with a overly yapster outro. Instead, I'm just gonna say, Jesus loves you. Thank you so much for listening. If somebody truly did listen through all of this, I stand by my claim. I do not deserve you. You are so awesome, and you're one of the biggest reasons why I do content. So yeah. I guess also, last disclaimer, I did not show you all of that stuff because I think I'm an amazing writer, or I'm an amazing singer. Oh my gosh, that was gonna be so cringe. Or I'm an amazing composer. No, it's none of that. It's that I want to share the things that I enjoyed doing with all of you. So if you enjoy them, then we can all enjoy them together. So yeah. Thanks for watching. I hope this is probably out before Christmas. If either way, thanks for watching. Jesus loves you. So have a great rest of your day. See ya!